She thumps a cane and drinks champagne. She's formidable and judgmental, but we can guarantee that she's a quintessential Lady D, but recognizes great potential. What would Danbury do?
Welcome to What Would Danbury Do, your guide to Julia Quinn's Bridgerton series from A to V. After Simon's surprising announcement and Daphne's even more surprising acceptance, London's most talked about couple finally make it to the altar. Meanwhile, the Featheringtons face a future of financial precarity. Benedict finds out that Henry's studio is not just for art, and Colin and Marina's romance deepens Penelope's heartache. It's episode 5, and like a virgin touched for the very first time, we're feeling the burn. Hi, I'm Kate.
I'm Rudy.
And I'm Adele.
All right, so here is a synopsis. You can tell that I wrote it because it's somewhat judgmental. Daphne and Simon are engaged, and Prince Friedrich really is the nicest man. The Queen, not so much, and she gets in the way of their special license, making the couple appear before her to plead their case. Colin begins his courtship of Marina in earnest, and Marina is relieved even as Penelope begs her not to trap Colin like this. Daphne and Simon wed and head off to Cliveden, Simon's ancestral home, but stop at an inn along the way. Feelings are revealed, and a wedding night is very much had. This episode features a very pretty speech, a royal mandate, an incredibly unhelpful discussion about reproductive health, and a large number of fire metaphors.
So this episode, we're picking up like pretty much exactly where we left off last episode. So Daphne comes home from the duel and pretends to have been there the whole time in order to speak with a hungover Violet.
I'm like, if you can't be a rich aristocratic woman and get to lie in bed when you're hungover, like what even is the point?
It is kind of fabulous, though. Her face is everything.
Oh, and she's all like, oh, I must have got whatever you had last night, Daphne. And I'm like, did you, Violet? Did you now?
Daphne kind of suggests Violet could help them get a special license so that they get married quickly.
So in order to get married, and this is still a tiny bit true today, even in Australia. I don't know about marriage conventions around the world. But you had to call the bands in order to get married. And I'm reasonably sure you had to do that 4 times. And basically the bands were announced in church and they were like, these 2 people intend to get married. If you have any reason why they can't get married, you have to come and tell us. And if they were announced 4 times, then the couple could get married. The special license meant that they didn't have to go through that whole rigmarole. I mean, obviously in Australia, you don't have to do that. But when you apply for a marriage license in order to get married, you still have to apply a month and a day before the wedding. So even though that convention of, if you have any reason why these people can't get married doesn't really exist anymore, the length of time still exists.
Why do they ask during the ceremony if you've got anything you want to reveal? Tell it now. You've already had 4 fucking shots.
Adele, some people live for the drama.
So we go to court. We get a lovely extended scene of the Queen's corgis, which are not corgis,
They're
rather.
not corgis.
The Queen's. No, I'm sorry. I wrote down Queen's corgis because obviously I have a very different queen in mind. I thought it was really interesting that Prince Friedrich was still wearing blue. I still firmly believe that Daphne should have gone with Prince Friedrich. I really think that was a really smart choice for her and that she took an enormous risk. And it's only because we know we're in a romance novel that it paid off. But it's interesting the role that Prince Friedrich played in this season because he was really just thrown in there to be an alternate for Simon. But he was never built up to be a good alternate for Simon because we didn't learn anything about him. I feel like there was a bit of a missed opportunity there because he could have been built up a lot more and he could have been a much more dynamic character. But I did wonder if the fact that he was still wearing blue is sort of to indicate that his feelings really were engaged. Like he and Daphne really were on the same page. They both wanted the same thing. They would have made a really strong match. And just because she has rejected him it doesn't mean that he is unaffected and can move on very easily, but that he's still entangled in his feelings for her and the future that he saw for them.
I just loved how untoxic he was. Like, we need to see more men reacting to rejection in a thoughtful, kind, and non-violent way, whether that be words or actions. I just thought it was really refreshing to see that, which in itself is horrifying that it's refreshing to see a guy deal with rejection in a nice way.
Then we do end up in Hyde Park, where, in stark contrast, Simon is late, disheveled, and hungover, but like the kind where you can smell the booze on him. It's all just...
So maybe he drank a lot and she decided to get like outfitted as her like courage or her armor.
This is his pre-duel drunkenness.
And he hasn't had a chance to really sleep it off yet.
He's seedy. That is the word that is coming to mind. Is that an Australianism?
Seedy? No, I don't think so. And it's interesting because Daphne and Simon are so out of sync. Like, they're not dressed to match. They're not talking to each other. They're not looking at each other. Behind them, Violet and Danbury do match.
I keep looking at Violet in her lavender as wearing like her widow mourning clothes, and now that Lady Danbury is matching her, like in my head I was just like, oh yeah, like dowagers, but kind of in a way of symbolizing like new love, next generation coming through.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
And then fucking Anthony.
You would think, okay, maybe not, I would think that the modiste who wants to dress all of the innocent young girls of the ton would have to be a little bit more discreet.
Genevieve has no fucks to give.
It was interesting that Genevieve would be able to move in both of those worlds.
Yeah.
But Sienna is gone.
I'm happy for her, and I hope that she's living her best life.
Well, and it holds up your theory from last episode as well, that she slept with him one more time as a goodbye, that she wasn't buying anything that he was saying about running away together, that she already had her own plans to escape, but she wanted to say goodbye.
She's fully aware that his responsibilities for his family will never disappear. Like, even if he came to her and said, like, run away, it's not who he is. It's not who his family is. So she called his bluff.
Meanwhile, Marina and Colin's romance is heating up, and Penelope is getting mean.
Yeah.
So I keep thinking about it from Marina's point of view. Penelope's attitude in that moment is coming out of nowhere. Like, as far as she was concerned, her marrying Colin would be a good thing because it would make them practically sisters. And now, all of a sudden, Penelope not only doesn't want that, but is like making sly jabs about it as well.
And from Marina's point of view, I mean, Penelope was her champion in the house. She was bringing her cake. She was checking her mail. She was keeping her company. And then Marina finally starts getting something that might be a good resolution to this very serious problem that she has. And all of a sudden, Penny turns on a dime. Rudy, I can see why you're saying that. It does feel like, from Marina's point of view, Penelope has moved from good friend to harsh critic with no real provocation. All right, so then we move on to Daphne getting her trousseau all done up. So Genevieve and Violet are having this sort of sly little conversation while Violet is still... So she's excited for Daphne. She's excited for this next step. And Daphne, of course, is still thoroughly mystified. I think it's overplayed in this scene. I'm pretty sure that Daphne can put together the at night when I touch myself thing to at least understand that whatever is going to happen is likely to happen at night. and is likely to have something to do with the feelings that she's already experienced through the masturbation scene. But she's still like staring around like, I don't know, Bambi or something.
It just makes me angry because we know Violet has a conversation with Daphne later in the episode, but wouldn't this have been the night or the afternoon to have that conversation?
I will always and forever be mad at both book and screen Violet for the way that she sends her child out into the world with no knowledge, or very, very basic knowledge. I will say in Daphne's defense about the 5 night dresses and why, like, I'm just going to say that she probably is like, well, I masturbated just fine and wore the same night dress the next night. Like, she's probably just not making that extra step of like, everyone else is having their own little giggle about, oh, he's going to rip them off her. Whereas like...
All right, yeah, okay. I also thought maybe she thought because they were getting married under false pretenses that they didn't need to go through everything the way that they would if she was getting married for legitimate love reasons. But I don't know. It felt like it was playing because she was so innocent and knew nothing, as opposed to she was being practical or she was unaware of the extent of what was going to happen to her new night clothes. I mean, then we have that, then Cressida comes in. And maybe it's just another way of creating that dichotomy between her and Cressida, where Daphne is all like sweet and innocent and straightforward, and Cressida is all sly and manipulative and gross and reptilian.
I don't know. Like
Daphne goes pretty fucking hard at the end.
That's Daphne's Machiavellian moment. Like, she is laying out that you can be an ally to a duchess or you can be an enemy. Not going to lie, that's where part of my critique from last episode came from. The fact that she is prepared to play this game. It just means that she's only prepared to play this game if the end result is that she marries Simon. She's not prepared to play the game if it results in her marrying a prince. Or, like, specifically Prince Frederick.
She's also not as good at it as Cressida is. Because Cressida's little parting shot, like, well, we'll see if you get him down the aisle first, is... I mean, that's a well-placed barb.
So the next scene is... I got really excited because when in the bonus episode about music, one of the pieces of music that Vanessa pointed out was Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and I actually recognized it, and I was like, oh my god, I'm a musical genius.
We see the Queen, and then we hear bum-bum-bum-bum, bum-bum-bum-bum.
I had the same moment, Rudy, and I'm like, Vanessa educated me. She educated me.
We learned shit. What do we need to know about this scene now that we've gotten excited?
I mean, really, she's displeased, but importantly, the king is lucid. It's a tiny scene because we cut immediately afterwards to Anthony and Simon in the church, seeing each other for the first time since the duel and being all like, I don't know, bros again. And Simon being a little bit baby feminist in there with his refusal to take a dowry, and also that, you know, the idea of a dowry is barbaric. And, you know, they're like, I don't know, fuck it. They're like, we shot at each other, but hey, everything turned out okay, so no hard feelings. And I'm like, I just don't understand.
So it's... It's that whole thing of like, men are not allowed to be physically affectionate with each other, so they have to have like a level of violence to it to make it okay to touch. That's a hallmark of male homosocial interaction. Sucks.
Either way, they're fine now.
Yeah.
For all that their relationship has aspects to it that are not understandable, I think really the scene is only here to give us one important piece of information, which is that Simon and Daphne's special license is being denied.
To that end of blah, 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 we're just trying to move forward. Daphne and Simon tell Lady Danbury and Violet that they have not been able to get a special license. And Lady Danbury has suggested that they just appeal to the Queen directly and tell her you are in love. You can do that, can't you?
Danbury knows, yeah.
I don't think it's so much of a question as a thinly veiled order to, like, get your shit together and act your asses off.
There's layers to her knowing because, like, without having to have been told, because Violet had to be fucking told and she's still not really getting it. Like, Danbury knows that there was something not quite right with that relationship, but they are genuinely in love, but they are pretending or maybe, like, incapable of understanding that they're both in love. Like, it is that full kind of range with her. Whereas I think Violet is just like, she's missing the tension. And I do kind of wonder if she's still hungover.
I mean, what's kind of scary is Violet in the books would only be a couple of years older than me right now, if to be the mother of Daphne, which is fucking horrifying.
Really?
Yeah, because she was 18 when she started pumping those babies out. Daphne is 8 years younger than Anthony, and she's what? I don't know how old she's supposed to be. This 18.
We agreed that she's probably around 18 in this version, and in the books she's 20.
So Violet's probably 46. But what I can say as a woman in that sort of ish age bracket is that hangovers do last for 2 to 3 days. That's my expertise.
I was wondering where this was going.
So we get into the scene where Benedict once again knocks on Henry's door, and Henry is once again gloriously disheveled. Henry lets him in, and not so much an art class this time around. And in a lot of the discussions that have happened online, this scene is sort of held up as proof that Benedict is not, in fact, meant to have this homoerotic relationship with Henry and that he's very clearly straight. But I really strongly disagree, because he goes into a room where he sees Henry having sex with another man. And then all of a sudden, Benedict has enough vigor to take 2 women to bed. And I'm thinking that in fact actually proves that he has that homoerotic relationship, because A, he suddenly had his eyes opened to the possibility that this is something that can happen, and B, he's super turned on.
Oh, I like that reading of that. What did Benedict think he was attending when he knocked on Henry's door? I just am hyper aware of the fact that he turned up at that house with no drawing material.
I felt like he may have been invited to like a soiree or a party or whatever, and just had no idea what kind of party.
I have 2 wishes for Benedict. One is that he ends up with a bear-sized, non-verbal Scottish man. I forgot what the second one was, but I think one's enough.
All right, so look, Simon is not his best self through this episode, and I'm not here for it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Kate, is like we've seen him on screen so far like 4 times, and 2 of those times he's been like drunk or hungover. It's not a great look. I really like the fact that Book Simon, once he considers himself like trapped, committed to getting married, like however you want to put it, he's very like, Jesus, take the wheel. Like, this is happening. I may as well be happy about it. Like, I may as well actually enjoy it. I love that about Book Simon. I don't love that Screen Simon is like having some very like, yeah, like
he's taking a page out of Anthony's book and just wearing his feelings on the outside and letting them splash all over who gets close enough to him.
And it is telling that when Will finds him, he at one point talks about trapping her. So, I mean, I guess that's supposed to reflect a bit more of the id, or like the deepest fear is that it's not because he doesn't want to be with her and be happy. He just fears that she's going to resent him sooner than later because he did this. He's taken all the responsibility on himself.
I had a teacher that used to say all the time, don't turn your guilt into anger, which is actually good advice, but was lost on the 8-year-olds that he was telling it to. But like, I feel like there is a don't turn your guilt into a drinking problem correlation here.
We've talked about this previously, and this is not where I intended to come back to it, but I think it's worth touching on now anyway. They've created Simon as a character who acts rather than verbalizes when it comes to his feelings. I'm wondering how that plays into this iteration of Simon, where he's sad and guilty and feeling all kinds of messy feelings. And rather than articulate them, he's laying in the gutter, deciding that his friend is perfectly valid in like calling him out for a duel, and that he's going to let Anthony shoot him. I know that was last episode, but it's connected. But like all this kind of, I think he doesn't even know where to start with how to fix things. So instead he just doesn't start.
But he also got what he wanted, but he has to punish himself for it, you know?
Because it wasn't under the circumstances that he wanted it to happen.
All right. So then we get another slam cut to another short little scene with Lady Featherington and Marina, where they're actually meeting. I'm not going to say as equals because they're not equals, but they're sort of meeting on the same strategic level.
We also find out in this moment just how far along Marina is, because she has 6 to 7 months before she'll be giving birth. And it made me think of a conversation that I had with a friend. Their, I want to say cousin, had given birth to a baby about 6 weeks early. And she was very like blasé about it all. I kept being like, no, I don't think you understand like how big a deal that is. And it's only kind of just now we realize that it's probably because her idea of an actual newborn baby is kind of skewed.
That happened in my family. My great uncle went looking for his birth certificate when he wanted to retire. So he's at birth deaths and marriages, and they're like, look, we don't have anybody under your name born on that day. We do have somebody born some 5 months earlier under your name. And that was the first time that anybody in our family knew that so this would be my great grandparents had anticipated their marriage vows. And it was really funny because my nana found out and said, oh, it's no wonder that his horoscope never fit.
Sorry, I can't just skip past the fact that someone in your family found out that their birthday was not really their birthday. Is that like they were lied to?
They were lied to their whole life. So my great grandparents went away shortly after they got married, came back with a child that was very healthy. And it was only when he went to retire at the age of 65 that he found out that his birthday was in fact not his birthday.
He could have retired 5 months earlier. That's real tragedy here. Jesus.
Anyway. Where are we going?
Look, one of my favorite scenes, actually, and I think I realized that we had like all of these teeny tiny scenes, but I actually really liked this scene. And I think it ties in really well with what's going to happen a little bit later on, because we get to see the king and we get to see he and the queen interact, and he's lucid and he's eating and they're having a conversation, and the actress who plays the queen did such beautiful face work. Yeah, like she just did beautiful face work in this scene because she's so tight all the time. And you can see her coming into the room and she's still that tension just radiates off her. And then he looks at her and starts having the conversation, and she softens. Like, she visibly softens. Her face softens, her eyes soften, her mouth softens, and she starts interacting with him, and they share a beautiful conversation, and you can see the deep love and respect and friendship that they have for each other. You can see sort of back to their courtship when they were falling in love, and it's so deeply moving as well, because obviously this little interlude can't last. It doesn't last. And when she has to bring the reality back into their situation, the king loses this moment of lucidity, and the queen loses that companionship that she had, that, you know, that idea of what she thought their lives were going to be like.
The next scene that we have is Daphne can't sleep.
I have to wonder about Daphne's night activity. Since she's been introduced to the pleasures of the flesh, has she been rubbing it out every night?
This is what I wanted to know, because if you are having trouble sleeping, I'm just saying.
She's still new to this.
Maybe she tried and got frustrated and decided to just walk it off.
Or maybe she doesn't. I mean, she's completely new to this, right? Like, for all we know, she's only done it once. And she did it after a nice walk and an interlude with Simon, where she was feeling excited and warm and, you know, all those flirty feelings. And now she's just feeling tired and stressed. And she hasn't realized that she can have fun with any mood that she wants. It's not just for when she's feeling flirty. She can, you know, rage masturbate or stress masturbate, as well as flirt masturbate.
I thought you were going to say that maybe she was trying to replicate the same conditions by going for a walk.
All right, and boom, cutscene again, because we're only ever spending 30 seconds at a time with anybody. And this is where we get our second hangover cure of the episode, and one that I personally find significantly more appetizing than raw eggs and garlic.
Hell no to fish. Nope. No.
Yeah. So, no, but what was it? It's charcoal and...
Oil.
Yes. Yes.
And so, it looks like she's just, blackened some salmon. And I'm totally here for some blackened salmon. That sounds delicious.
Yeah, just
fish
a
smell,
good,
no, when you're hungover. No.
You can have a bacon sandwich. And it would be the same. It'd still be oil and charcoal.
Yeah.
Alice and Will are the best romance of the show so far.
Agreed. Hard agree.
I also just really love their kids, and I love the fact that the way that Simon wakes up is because there is a child staring him dead in the face.
Accurate. This has woken me up that way, and it's fucking terrifying.
Just super up close and upside down.
Yeah.
Personal space? What's that? Let me just breathe right into your nose.
Oh, yeah, that kid's about to get an absolute snootful of something that's not going to smell very nice.
Well, isn't that what he says? Doesn't he say you smell bad?
Yeah.
I love the set design of their house, too. It feels so lovely and warm and, intimate and just, I love it.
Lived in.
Yes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Bridgerton house is very, white. It's very clean lines, and I want to say cold, but I'm probably just being mean.
No, I think it's there. It's not lived in. I know it's supposed to be this warm family home, but that warmth doesn't come from the decorations.
Yeah, the only reason that I believe you can put your feet on a seat in Bridgerton home is because I've seen Benedict do it, right? If I didn't watch him literally do it and then be glared at by his sister, I wouldn't have believed that's a home where that is something you can get away with. Anyway, Simon and Daphne are ready to appeal to the Queen.
I really like how much of the Queen we're seeing in this episode. I feel like she has been almost a caricature up until this point, and we've seen a lot of her in this episode in different aspects of her life, and I feel like we're getting a stronger character sketch of her. Like, we saw her with her nephew, we saw her when she was displeased, we saw her with her husband when she was softer. Now we're seeing her very much as the petty regent. I'm really enjoying like spending some quality time with the Queen.
If we hadn't have got that history, that I guess behind the scenes of the palace during this episode, it wouldn't have played why she changed her mind about approving the marriage. I mean, it's a great speech, but it wouldn't have played as well if the writing of the Queen and the King and Queen scene and Golda's reactions to all that, there's emotional weight to that scene that is just not about Simon and Daphne. He's just lucky that the Queen had a lucid meeting with the King that day.
I don't think Simon was lucky necessarily. I think what he did was take Lady Danbury's advice to heart when she said, be sincere. And I think the Queen and the King scene isn't necessarily, it's there to bring the viewers up to speed. I think even if we didn't know that the Queen and King shared a deep friendship, the speech would have worked anyway.
Can I just check in for a second? You guys both, having said that you would not choose Simon, when you're presented with this speech, if you were the Queen, you would be like, yep, go forth, get married, special license. Is that where we're at?
I can see why she does give in to this speech.
Okay. I hate this speech. I hate it so much.
Is it the delivery or the writing?
It's the concept. If he had not said it was a farce, I would be on board. I'd be like, yeah, it's friendship, it's conversation, it's all these things. And that I love. Stop telling people that you that you deceived them.
But I think that he dances a very, very thin line there because he says, we've been fooling all of Mayfair. They all thought that we were courting, but we just couldn't stay away from each other because we liked each other.
Well, you know what? His sneakiness gets him no special license from me. Anyway.
Well, I mean, if they'd waited a month, then maybe Francesca could have shown up for the fucking wedding.
Oh.
As it is, literally nobody is there. Literally nobody. It's like the smallest wedding I've ever seen. And I'm like, they're Bridgertons, for Christ's sake. They couldn't have got a crowd? Like, what the hell?
But did you see Anthony's face? He's so happy and proud of her, and my little Anthony, Stanheart was just like, yes.
Meanwhile, Daphne had the same pained expression from the second she stepped into the church all the way through the whole wedding.
It is a deeply earnest and sincere wedding, which, I don't love. But again, it's kind of the only option that we have if they're going to keep being, if they're going to keep misunderstanding each other. Oh my God, that's what's wrong with all of this. Oh, it's a misunderstanding where it's just all you have to do is talk to each other, but they keep not talking to each other. Oh God, this is exhausting.
Obviously, screen Simon and Daphne have to live in a different story from book Simon and Daphne. And for the most part, I'm pretty fine with that. But I have to say, I do kind of regret that they had to lean hard into the misunderstanding and drama and out of the laughing kiss like they had in the book. That was such a nice way for them to get married in the book. And in this way, it's just a lot of pain and tension. And
because they have a perfect moment where they could have at least started to hint at the fact that, don't worry, guys, this has all been a misunderstanding.
I kind of wish they had talked to another person about it properly, but they really haven't set Daphne up with a confidant in this series, and Simon doesn't use Will to the level he could, but maybe that's toxic masculinity.
But
I would kind of like them to talk about their feelings a bit more instead of us having to read into every micro expression.
But this, like, that moment when he removes her glove in order to put on the wedding ring, and they almost have a moment, but then both look away too quickly. Like, that should have been the start of a hint. Like, that's where you start seeding the idea that they're going to be able to get through this and they can start talking to each other. But instead, we go to their wedding party, which has a lot more people, but the misunderstanding continues.
First, we have Penelope and Marina having their thing, and Lady Featherington is there as well, and wearing an enormous butterfly on her head, and also very unhappy because old Soldier Tooth has gotten himself engaged to somebody else, and Marina is not sad.
Her delivery of that line is just it's actually my highlight of this episode. Like, it's a close call between her and Alice, but like that.
And then she goes for what she wants. Like, she goes from I feel a little faint to engaged in what? 90 seconds? It's impressive. I'm impressed by her.
The argument with Pen is kind of interesting too, because she said you could pick anyone. It didn't have to be a good man or a bad. Like, so I mean,
her argument falls apart, like right apart here, because she's willing to let anybody else get tricked by Marina, just not Colin.
She's also failed to realize she's made this situation worse on two different occasions. Once when she told her mother about it would take a while for Colin to propose because he's so young. Then Mrs. Featherington has a conversation with Marina that expedites that conversation, and Marina is able to pivot that to the social prestige of marrying a Bridgerton. And then she confronts Marina at the wedding, and that really puts a fire under Marina to get it done, which she already was pretty convinced. So, like, every time Penelope does something, it actually makes the situation worse from her point of view.
I was going to say worse for Penelope, but like not really anybody else.
Great for Marina.
We also have the Queen who attends and is wearing a wig. And she also starts her little subterfuge with Eloise, who shares the best longing glance across a ballroom in this episode with Penelope, regardless of what other else drama is going on between any of the characters. It's Penelope's that is really exemplifying that inability to be together longing that we all want to see.
Penelope doesn't deserve Eloise in this episode. Eloise deserves more.
Benedict sees Henry and his wife.
Awkward.
Well, Benedict uses a strategy that I have from time to time been known to use, which is when you're feeling awkward or don't know what to say, you drink. Which is not a good long-term strategy, but it's good. It's a good short-term strategy.
Anthony mentions to Daphne that Simon has kind of waived the dowry, and Anthony has made sort of an assumption that it's for future children, which upsets Daphne, and she dramatically runs up the staircase in the middle of the party to go to her very sterile room, to which Violet then chases her. Wouldn't you have prioritized having this conversation the evening before or earlier?
Like, arm your kids with a bit of fucking information, please.
The talk is a series of talks, not just a one-off. You need to start this conversation young. There are age-appropriate ways to introduce all of the things that Violet should be fucking telling Daphne all the way through, so that it's never a surprise. A better informed child is a child who's going to make better choices.
Oh, I'm going to preempt this because, like, I actually am slightly ahead of schedule and have, like, done the edits. But, like, we have an incredible bonus episode coming up with Dr. Jodie McAllister, and she made a fantastic point that, like, one of the problems of leaving Daphne ignorant of what sex is, how it works, all of the things, it's actually really dangerous because, like, it means that she won't have the knowledge or the language to recognize or explain if something was to happen. It leaves her intensely vulnerable. We might leave that idea there because Jodie says it so much better. But, like...
We don't have much else to say because Violet gets cut off by somebody arriving to say that the carriages are there. And she's like, great, excellent, carriages, gotta go, whoosh! And, like, leaves the room so fast that a puff of smoke shows up behind her. And then we're downstairs and Daphne's saying goodbye to all of her family.
When they arrive at the inn... Like, it feels like they've not spoken since, I don't know, since he told her that they're staying at an inn and not Cliveden. I'm just like, oh, okay.
And then they get shown to the rooms and Simon does this, like, little finger thing, like, I got another room. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go over this way. And it's so awkward and, yeah. And then they both start getting their steps up in their respective rooms, which is, I mean, obviously important after a huge wedding breakfast, but, like, they clearly are each getting in their 10,000 before anything else happens.
Kate, what if the walking is actually deeply important to being able to have sex? Like, you gotta go for a walk. You gotta go for a walk before you can masturbate. You've got to go for a walk before you can lose your virginity. This is the world of Bridgerton. This is the world they're building me. This is why Anthony's always fucking outside. Like, I have yet to see textual proof that that's not the case.
Look, I'm not saying that that's not, you know, that an argument can't be made for that. If it is, then they're both preparing really well. Like, they're making sure that they're good and prepared.
Everything I told the Queen was true. I cannot stop thinking of you. From the mornings you ease, to the evenings you quiet, to the dreams you inhabit. My thoughts of you never end. I am yours, Daphne. I have always been yours.
I do not understand.
I do not know how to be any more clear.
Well, do not get angry.
I'm not angry.
You look angry and bothered. Look at you. You're downright flushed.
Yes, that is what happens.
When one is angry.
When one burns for someone who does not feel the same.
You burn for me.
Why do you think I followed you into that garden?
Why do you think I went into that garden?
In my head, it was the Barlow and Bear Burn For You song from the Bridgerton musical, which I'm like, I would prefer them to start singing that to each other than whatever the fuck we're getting right now. Because then it jumps from, I burn for you too, to, I'm going to take your clothes off, let's fuck. It just, I don't know if this was directed by a man, but it felt like it was directed by a man. So I didn't really, it just felt very perfunctory to me.
I mean, as far as like the other sex scenes that have happened in Bridgerton, this one is quite slow and tender. Yeah.
When he grabbed her hand and asked her about like if she had done what he'd asked and then like the hands went down, that was hot.
I think what you're tapping into though, or what you're noticing is that like the masturbation scene, like the kiss, this is a scene that goes very quickly and it's expecting you to believe that that would be enough. The way that people have been talking about Bridgerton and the sex scenes.
As if they're transformative. Like, what the hell have you been watching and reading?
Yeah.
I feel like they keep using the attractiveness of our hero as a shortcut for the actual quality writing and performances and direction.
In defense of this scene.
Rudy, are you going to be wrong now?
Yeah, I am. One of the reasons why it kind of does need to be a quick sex scene is because we literally need to see him ejaculate, not inside her. I'm largely comparing it to the kiss of the previous episode and the fact that, like, at least this, they look comfortable and I actually sincerely understand what they're doing from a body mechanics point of view. So it moves a bit slower, not a lot, but a bit. Checks in with her a couple of times. Mm-hmm. There are things about it that I think work, and it just... If this was our introduction to romance texts, like, yeah, I can understand enjoying it a lot more.
Yeah. The one note I wrote down for this scene was button porn. I wish they'd leaned more into that kind of stuff. I guess he did unlace her, what's the name for it? I don't remember. First from days. the First Days. I mean, you can't help but compare it to the Outlander virginity wedding night episode, which is incredibly well done and shows the emotional connection between the two of them. I guess, it's the male hero is the virgin in that situation, and the first time does not go very well, but it's, yeah.
Absolutely not the worst loss of virginity scene that I've ever seen. It's not even the worst sex scene that I've ever seen. I think because we're romance readers, because we've read this book, because we have access to high quality sex scenes that are erotic and explicit at the same time, we just expected a bit more.
There was an intimacy coordinator attached to this.
Yeah, but I mean, the intimacy coordinator isn't there to direct. She's it was a she in this case, but as general speaking, they're there to make sure everybody feels safe during the course of the shooting of it. So I don't think that we can blame the intimacy coordinator for taking any of the.
Can I blame the American audience? Do you think making sanitizing this a little bit for American audiences maybe came into play?
There's a super interesting article that was published in Blood Knife, and it's actually about action films. When I was reading it, it kept making me think about Bridgerton, about some romance novels, where it's like they're so caught up in this idea of like what would stylistically be hot or like look good, but unless there is an emotional core to it, like what's the actual point? I probably believed in this more than you guys, but there are others that I have more time for.
It just so puzzles me when people talk about being this being the hottest thing like they've ever seen, and I'm like, what are you watching?
This is the same conversation that as a community we all went through when 50 Shades of Grey hit the mainstream.
Oh, God, yes. What this highlights to me is how unsatisfactory people's sex lives must be.
I really don't think it's about that, because that's like saying that because we read romance, we have fantastic sex lives. And I wouldn't pass judgment on what your media consumption actually says about your sex life. I think it says something about what kind of media you're consuming.
No, agreed. That's the thing, right? That women's stories, and that's predominantly like romance, has been so underrepresented. And we see this in Bridgerton. People were so excited because this is like one of the first things that has been big in romance that got adapted. It kicks open the door, right? But for a lot of people, this is the introduction. And I really hope people can see the breadth of what is possible in female-centered stories that do focus on potentially like love and sex and like partnership and all sorts of things. We haven't had that. We haven't had a lot of that.
There's an argument to be made that they couldn't have a really hot sex scene in this because they're going into this scene with such a discrepancy in terms of the power and the knowledge and the experience. Even though Daphne is able to sort of overcome all of that and still orgasm as part of the experience. And then, you know, she finishes off the episode by saying she feels wonderful. There's an, like, you can see why maybe it might not have been a full merging of emotional and physical and their physical beings.
I think we do need to sit with the idea, like, over the next couple of episodes. Is that the point? That's giving them a lot of fucking credit, and I don't think they deserve it. But I do think it's a worthy question.
But they have depicted it as satisfactory is the problem.
I mean, but these are characters that consistently lie to themselves and each other, so...
Yeah, no,
I mean, we cannot get ahead of ourselves, but I'll be very interested in continuing this discussion in the next couple of episodes, because I think you've raised a really interesting point that is going to play into a romance trope that I fucking hate, but let's talk about this in the next couple of episodes, because what you're saying is interesting to me.
It's basically to be continued, right?
Yeah. Oh, fuck. One very final thing before we go. I don't care how you feel about this scene necessarily, but I love the song that is playing. And, like, it's an original composition.
I've already forgotten it.
Doesn't matter. It's an original composition by Kris Bowers, and it's called Strange, and it features Hilary Smith, and I just adore it. Like, I think this is the suite that's based on a composer that I've forgotten the name of already.
I Shazammed it because I liked it so much.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that we can agree on something. Oh, God.
All right. All right.
Now it's time for...
What would Danbury do?
This week we're shaking things up a bit for What Would Danbury Do? Our letter comes not from a book, but from Julie from the Netflix show Julie and the Phantoms. She writes,
Dearest Lady Danbury, I've got a bit of a situation afoot that feels nearly impossible to solve without your help. I'd fallen out of love with music. I didn't want to sing a note, much less play it myself after my mother had passed away. Music was our happiest hideaway where we could blissfully bond to the beat. When she left, she took the melody with her. Or so I thought. I've fallen back in with the rhythm of my heart as a result of 3 men, Alex, Reginald, and Luke, who've arrived in my life and brought their own lyrics and love. The melodies and chords have never been stronger. Luke, in particular, has become my closest confidant. We toil together over notes and we've created perfect harmony. Luke is in my thoughts constantly and I desperately want our relationship to progress. There's just one problem. He's a ghost. No, like literally, he died after eating a bad hot dog in 1995. How can I fall in love with a phantom? I'm desperate for your help, so please tell me, what would Danbury do?
I kind of love that we keep getting, like, character work from people that are sending these.
The question that she's asked here, how can I fall in love with a phantom, I think is a question that already has the answer, which is obviously you can. I think the real question that she's looking for is what kind of future can I expect from a love affair with a phantom, which is an entirely different question. And look, man, that's tough. Like this is some ghost situation that we've got going on here, and we don't necessarily have Whoopi Goldberg lying around to lend her hands. So not every relationship is destined to be forever. You live many different lives from the time that you're born, and who you are at different stages in your life and different times in your life can change dramatically. And to expect that every person that you have in your life, even, I mean, I'm speaking about romantic relationships, but even friendships, you know, those relationships are going to grow and change and perhaps drift apart because you're no longer what you need from each other anymore. And if Luke is there to help Julie rediscover her part of herself that she loves and also rediscover this connection with her mom and set her on a path to healing, then maybe the fact that he's a ghost and that forever isn't necessarily possible isn't a bad thing. Like, I think that there's a lot of value in being in your relationship that you're in and being present in it rather than borrowing trouble for what's going to happen in the future. So I guess if I were Lady Danbury, I'd say stop worrying about it. Just be present in the relationship and then cross any bridges that come up when you get there.
I think it raises a very interesting challenge in that I don't know the rules of dating a ghost, but I imagine it doesn't necessarily make touching, like physical touch, easy. And you will have to, in your relationship, you have to find solutions to how to express love that is maybe beyond the scope of just the physical. I think that's quite a nice idea, particularly for a teen romance.
I think continue to write kick-ass songs with Luke and have honest and like emotionally resonant conversations. Do not go for Nick. He's wishy-washy. But if you continue to have imagined dance routines with Luke, I fully approve.
Thank you to Christine from The Shipping Room, which is one of our sister podcasts on the Frolic Podcast Network. Christine wanted to recommend Julie and the Phantoms because even though it's technically a show aimed at tweens and early teens, it's also just a really lovely show that makes you feel good and smile. The writing is fantastic, the acting is good, and Christine is keeping her fingers and toes crossed for a second season. And incidentally, The Shipping Room has an episode about Julie and the Phantoms, which we'll link to in our show notes.
I'm on it.
I'm very, very early in their backlist, but like I've started listening to The Shipping Room and I'm really enjoying it. Christine was hoping that we could recommend some romance novels that might be of interest to someone who enjoys Julie and the Phantom. So I'm thinking of like ghost romance or rockstar romance.
I grew up on this book or this movie called The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. I haven't watched it in a long time, and it was an old movie when I watched it. So this comes with the caveat that it may not have aged well from the time when I was watching it. I think I watched it last when I was a teenager, but I loved this movie growing up, and it has a ghost, and it's achingly romantic. Ghost romances, well, I don't know that I recommend it exactly. But, far out, what's her name?
Describe it.
It's the vampires who aren't vampires, and they all walk around in big boots, and they all have H's in their name.
J.R. Ward.
J.R. Ward. Yeah,
The
has
Black
a ghost
Dagger
romance.
Brotherhood. Kate. Oh, I'm gonna cry. Jane. And
Jane. Yeah, and Vicious?
yes, because everyone was like, oh yeah, Vicious is so gay that the only person that, like, the only woman that he can be, like married to or whatever, that's not what they call it in this world, but married to is a ghost woman. Oh, Christine, I can't in good faith recommend this series to you.
It's a time, okay? It's a time. It may not work for you, but it's definitely there. And it's a bit like junk food, I think. You'll probably like devour them real fast, but you won't feel particularly good about yourself afterwards. In terms of rock star romances, I mean, Kylie Scott, like she has the sort of the asshole rock star heroes with the no nonsense woman pairing that I know a lot of people really enjoy as well.
Nalini Singh also has a rockstar romance series that I really enjoy. Like, one of the problems with ghost romance is that it is, it kind of either means that you're going to end up not together, or you're both going to end up dead. And romance readers have very strong feelings about that. Although I did really like, something about Christine's description made me think of Meg Cabot's Ghost Whisperer series.
It's the Mediator series.
Oh.
Jessie, the hot ghost that lives in her bedroom.
If you would like to send us a thinly veiled recommendation in the form of a letter, we want to hear from you. Just audio record your letter and email it to us at bridgerton@gmail.com.
Bridgertonpod@gmail.com.
Fuck me. I don't know our email address. I just make my own emails up. It doesn't matter. Send them anywhere. It's because I don't look at the email address.
Into the ether.
Just, oh God, wouldn't it be delightful if people were just like emailing like some random, these like weird little, okay. And email it to us at bridgertonpod@gmail.com.
That's all for this episode of What Would Danbury Do? We'll be back in a fortnight to discuss episode 6, Swish. If you haven't followed our new Instagram account, you can do so at WWDDpod. You can still find us on Twitter at BridgertonPod, send us an email at bridgertonpod@gmail.com, or join the conversation with the hashtag WWDDpod. You can also leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. Leaving reviews makes it 20% more likely that you'll find cash in the pocket of those jeans that you haven't worn in a while. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded land of the Gadigal, Wurundjeri, and Boonwurrung people, and edited by audio producer Rudy Bremer on Gadigal country. Thanks for listening, and remember, WWDD. What Would Danbury Do is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts.